In the Toretsk sector, in early June, they captured Delivka and Dashna to the east of Toretsk. To the west, the Russians made a considerable advance between Romanivka and Novoolenivka, capturing Netivka, Staromykolaivka and Zorya in the process. Russia has also solidified its control over the TO504 highway, a key supply line between Pokrovsk and Kostiantynivka. North of the highway, they advanced on Popov Yar and Kopcheva and captured Malinivka in June. To the southwest of Pokrovsk, the Russian army has made westward progress from Udachna to Bahyta. This is the area where Russian progress has been most consistent in recent months. Lastly, Russian units have achieved minor breakthroughs in the Velika Novosilka sector, reaching Kama and Zaporizhia in June. At least some Russian recon units have crossed the administrative border of Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk oblasts. This does not mean much from a purely military perspective, since this advance does not indicate an imminent offensive inside Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, and the current Russian presence should be interpreted within the framework of its operations in Donbass. Nevertheless, the presence of the Russian army in another oblast gives Putin political options, as he may choose to lay a legal claim over Dnipropetrovsk Oblast as well, however dubious and illegal it may be. Another military advantage that Russia still possesses is its long-range strike capability. In June, they conducted several large-scale air attacks. The June 16th attack was particularly deadly. The Russians launched more than 440 Shahed drones and more than 30 missiles, and almost half of them targeted Kyiv. At least 15 people were killed in this horrific attack. According to Ukrainian intelligence, Russia currently produces 170 domestically modified Shahed drones per day, which has allowed them to launch 300 to 400 Shaheds and several missiles a couple of times a week, depleting Ukraine's air defense arsenal. More air defense systems, with a sufficient arsenal of air defense missiles, is key for Ukraine at this point in the war. Ukraine needs more conventional air defense systems, and new systems specifically designed to counter large swarms of Shahed or Shahed-like drones, a system which would be economically viable to use against very cheap Shahed drones. In June, Ukraine's Defense Minister Umerov announced that an unspecified European company will start the production of anti-Shahed missiles in Ukraine. But the currently ongoing war between Israel and Iran has made its mark on Ukraine's air defense capabilities, among other things too. After the start of hostilities, the Pentagon announced that it was sending APKWS guidance kits procured through the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative to the Middle East. According to Zelensky, these were 20,000 anti-Shahed missiles, which would have been really helpful for Ukraine at this point. But obviously the United States considers the protection of its interests in the Middle East and the protection of Israel in particular as a higher priority. Generally speaking, even if the war between Israel and Iran had not started, the United States was already on the course of decreasing its participation in Ukraine. It is beyond reasonable doubt that Trump's attempts to end the war in Ukraine rapidly in a single diplomatic cavalry charge has failed. We have stated on numerous occasions that there is a chasm between Ukraine and Russia's vision of an acceptable end to this war. Kyiv is ready to accept a ceasefire and Russia's de facto control over the occupied territories, in exchange for security guarantees. But Russia insists on de jure recognition of its sovereignty over all illegally annexed territories, even those which are controlled by Ukraine, along with demanding a smaller army, no peacekeepers, and a neutral status for Ukraine. Basically nothing that could stop Putin from attacking Ukraine once again if he feels like it. Some speculate that Russia is making these harsh demands as a starting point in talks, and there is room for negotiations. But statements coming from Russia tell a different story. Russia continues to insist on eliminating the so-called root causes to stop the war in Ukraine. The root cause is former socialist countries of Central and Eastern Europe choosing to join NATO to protect themselves from Russia. It is easy to see how it is a non-starter for NATO and the post-1997 NATO members. Furthermore, on June 20th, Putin stated that since Ukrainian people are the same as Russians, the whole of Ukraine is Russia's. This may be seen as a tongue-in-cheek remark by some, but if you follow Putin's statements on Ukraine, you would recognize that the Russian president does not take Ukraine's sovereignty seriously, and considers the very existence of the state of Ukraine an egregious mistake by Russia, which he intends to fix. Russia uses diplomacy only to pursue its goal of destroying Ukraine, and sees Kyiv's capitulation as the end goal of its war. Thus, in hindsight, with where things stand now, Trump's attempts to end the war were doomed to fail, unless Ukraine was going to accept capitulation. But the situation on the battlefield absolutely does not dictate that Kyiv agreed to the Kremlin's maximalist demands. So, in the absence of a viable diplomatic path, Trump could have chosen to increase pressure on Putin via more military support to Ukraine and more robust economic sanctions, or to seek an exit from their role as Ukraine's main military supporter. It looks like Trump has chosen the latter option. According to a Wall Street Journal report, the incumbent administration has been pressuring Senator Lindsey Graham, the main figure behind the new bill of sanctions against Russia, to weaken its language and provisions. US officials have indicated openly and implicitly that they think the war in Ukraine is mostly Europe's problem, and European countries would need to step up, while the Americans gradually decrease their participation. And since Russia's victory would cause a grave and obvious threat to Europe's security, they intend to continue supporting Ukraine, although there is still criticism of the pace and the amount of European deliveries to the Ukrainian army. Currently, the main focus is drones and artillery ammunition to help the Ukrainians maintain defense at a time when they are suffering from manpower shortages and the investment into Ukraine's domestic military production capabilities to increase its independence in terms of weapons.